Ready, set, go.
Welcome to The Sweet Spot, an UpDog podcast. I'm Andrea Morissette.
And I am Jack Bailey, and we are your co-hosts today.
And we're getting back to the origins, people. You guys have requested it. The origins of UpDog. Today, we have the elusive and amazing Bryan Batchelder. Whoop, whoop.
I like that. The elusive. That's right.
The best way to explain it is if there's the man behind the curtain in Wizard of Oz, it's this dude. He is the man behind the wizard behind the curtain is Bryan. So he's the one who manages all of our the website stuff, the database, all of our tracking. He is the programming genius behind UpDog and one of our founders. So welcome, Bryan, and thanks for being here on the podcast today. We would love to hear a little bit about you to start off. So tell us about you, your dogs, a little bit about what you'd like to do with your time, all that.
Okay, so live in Dade City, approximately 1.9 miles away from Jack and Cat.
Nice.
Though when we started, that was not the case. Lived down in Wesley Chapel by Tampa. My significant other and I have always had dogs since we got together. Started off with Chihuahua she had from a roommate in college that sort of abandoned the dog. And I had a German Shepherd was my first dog as an adult. And kind of got into dog sports slowly, more her than me. So for a long time, I was sort of like dog sport adjacent. I was knowledgeable, would go to like agility trials, flyball events, things like that. But it wasn't until I think sometime in early 2013, my recollection and Jamie's recollection is that a flyball competition got sort of canceled. And a small group of us were like, hey, there's this disc dog thing. Let's go check that out and try it out. And we did. And like, just by the very nature of flyball dogs being trained to run both directions, like we did really well. Like, you know, a lot of, I think even at the time, there wasn't like, there didn't seem to be that sort of ethos in disc dog to like make sure your dog's trained to run back just as fast. Or like lots of dogs taking victory laps, stuff like that. So that kind of piqued my interest. And then I think it was later that, yeah, it was definitely the like December 2013, Jamie signed us up for a Positive Vibe camp at Jack and Cat's. That's where I met all of you guys. And I had like no idea who you were. Sort of just lucked into by happenstance, like palling around with like some of the best disc dog players that were around. I had no idea. Learned a ton, had a lot of fun, and kind of made a point to try to stay up with it. So like that, the rest of 2014, well, for the first part, I want to say, Jamie and I would go together to disc dog events. And one of those, you guys invited me to like the UpDog beta testing. I don't think at the time, I think we were talking about how it might be able to help UpDog, but I think it was after the beta testing that sort of manifested. And it wasn't until like mid 2014 that I like started to go to disc dog events by myself without Jamie. And yeah, that's sort of my recollection of how that started.
I had forgotten about the P-Vibe camp, Bryan.
Was that one
I
of the
forgot
weekers
that that's where you kind of first started, and that's where we first met you, like you said.
Yep. Yeah. Ron and April connecting us all together. I know they connected you guys and Babs too.
Yeah,
I
and
didn't
that was
realize
was that the P-Vibe at your house, the New Year's one?
Yeah, I didn't realize it was that year, that it was right before UpDog.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, I mean, I remember y'all coming to camp.
Yeah, we were there.
But I don't remember that it was that particular camp. So like that camp, like that's the camp where we told Ron about UpDog. And Ron told us about what Babs was doing. And so Bryan, you were there. You weren't part of the conversations, but like that weekend was
Created it there.
Pivotal, critical weekend for UpDog.
I think that's the one where we lit the fireworks on top of the discs at night with the sparklers and threw them. I remember that memory, all of us. I think that was the last P Vibe camp that all of us were there, actually. The New Year's camp.
And well, and I think we also did like a showing of Idiocracy as well. I
Yes.
kind of remember that, if you guys remember
Yeah.
that.
And like 2 people watched it. Everybody else did.
It was more than that, but yeah.
Yeah, that was the first
a long
time I
time
was
ago.
in it. I loved it.
Was
Yeah.
that in our house or was that on the van?
On the
It was
van.
out on the van. Someone brought a projector.
Yeah, it was outside. I remember it was outside.
Movies on the
I think
van.
maybe, Jack, you had borrowed a Pinellas County School Systems projector for that.
Great. Now I'm gonna have the school
Borrowed.
system bust down the door here any second.
You're retired. It doesn't matter.
You're out. They can't make you come back in.
I
We got
think I
you
still
now.
have that projector.
Oh my God.
We
And
can
what
edit that
do you
part
have,
out.
Brian? What kind of dogs do you have now that you like to play with?
So we've had a bunch. Well, we have 9 dogs now, and for the most part, it's either border collies, whippets, or border whippets.
Noodles.
Yes. But prior to that, had a German Shepherd, had some mixes. Like remember Fiona, a
Fiona was
Dutch
amazing.
Shepherd
Terrifying.
Staffy,
But the most
and you
lovely-
know. You played a lot with her. Several children, like that was their intro dog to disc. So fond memories of her.
Yeah, she was great.
Scandal was a
I played with
border-
her. She lived with me for 6 months when I went to
Yep.
start at my Purina job. She was a wonderful border staffy. Oh, I love her so much.
Yep. So she passed last year. She kind of became my mom's dog when she was fully retired from sports and wanted she got along with the other dogs, but I think she was much happier being a single dog in a house.
Staffy wants all that love, right? They don't want to
Exactly.
share. They don't want to share.
We do. So one of our border whippets is actually also mixed with a Kelpie. That's Fleet, and she. I played a fair amount with her in disc and dock diving. She was pretty amazing. She still is. She's not dead. But that Kelpie, man, I don't ever want another dog that's got Kelpie in them. They're the crazy ones that like will help herd cows and they'll run on the backs of the cows and stuff.
They're like coolies.
Yeah.
And they're very intellectual dogs. They're very interesting thought-wise.
Right. Wasn't that the dog that went off the 2nd floor of the hotel?
It very much is. Yes. Jamie had her. I forget. It must have been a fly ball event that she was out of town for, and it was one of those like hotel motels where the doors were all on the outside of the property, but you had stairs and like balconies that you'd walk to your room. And we saw something, and they were on the 4th floor, and she literally just jumped over the balcony, and
survived.
Jamie felt the leash tighten, but then slacken, and she thought she was going to look over the side and see Fleet dead or severely injured. But luckily, she basically just swung to the balcony below, and when it like hit where it was about to swing the other way, it slackened enough. She was on a slip lead, and with that whippet head and neck, she slipped out of it. So she literally just came away with it with like the slightest scratch on her ass.
And it's a whippet. That's amazing. Like they get hurt breathing.
Yeah. But that Kelpie crazy brain, like just I don't know what she thought she was doing, but I'm gonna get that bird and
Well,
no more Kelpie.
No more Kelpie, but them noodles are great additions.
Yeah.
All right. So, Brian, our first question, actually, you kind of already like jumped into it. From your recollection, what was your first exposure to UpDog was our first question. But the follow-up to it, and you kind of answered that, but the follow-up to it was like, do you remember any conversations about like the shape of UpDog data, like data collection, like when you entered into it, like where were we at? What were we trying to do? And how did you jump in saying, hey, I could help with that?
So I think it was by the time I got involved, it was pretty much a fully formed idea. And I think it really resonated well with me because I was sort of the target demographic for UpDog, at least the part of like the funnel for getting new players involved in the sport. So the idea of, you know, making sure that you're likely to get an achievement like the first time you ever play, and that you know have those video game style achievements throughout your career to sort of keep you motivated, like that really resonated with me. You know, coming from doing P-Vibe as like my first real introduction into training for Disc Dog, the idea that the games were essentially building you up to learn how to play freestyle, I thought that was pretty cool. So like it really, like I thought it was, oh wow, they have a really great idea. They just need someone to help them execute on the digital and technology side of things. And you know, UpDog's kind of unique. I don't know of any other dog sport that's team oriented. It's almost always exclusively like to the dog, and the handler doesn't really matter so much. Like the awards and the points and stuff accrue on the team. So it was interesting thinking about how to make all that work. I do remember my one contribution was coming up with the Unobtanium
Yeah.
Up.
Yeah, I remember that.
From my sci-fi nerddom. You know, I think the movie that made me think of it was The Core, which is a horrible movie, but
I've
then
seen
I
that
think also
movie.
like
I've seen it.
I think Avatar, they made the medal on Pandora also unobtainium. It's like kind of a trope, so I really liked that we added that as the ultimate up that you can earn.
Isn't it funny how we remember those contributions that we make to UpDog, and then we're like, yeah, that was mine. And then when people like do it or see it or use it, it's like, I don't know, it's kind of cool to like see something that came from your brain that other people are using.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate seeing people like thrive and see UpDog like sort of, especially get people into the sport and have them stay there. You know, some of the stats that we have are pretty interesting about like how many new players we bring in
Tension
every
and
year. That's yeah, been a very very good experience.
well, how did you
So
oh, sorry, go ahead, Jack.
I'm trying to like, because I honestly don't remember this. I'm not just asking the question for the podcast, and pretending like I don't remember it. But like maybe this is something Kat can comment on as well. Between the two of you guys probably remember. But like I'm just trying to remember like before we had our current system, like how were we accepting scores, and like how were we sharing that how people did and things like that? Like, did we have spreadsheets? Like, what were we posting? Like, what was it?
Might have
Or
just
was
been,
there nothing before the current system?
I Go ahead,
I thought
Brian.
Go ahead, Pat.
I mean, I think we were waiting for one of Dre and Jason's people to program something, but it hadn't happened.
Mhm.
So I think Brian came in right at the time. I don't recall us collecting data before he joined, but I could be wrong.
I don't think we did. I don't think we had a solution for it. I think it was a
So
conversation. Yeah.
I looked back and it looked like the team site went live June of 2015, but our very first event in the system is like April 19th, 2014. So I'm guessing we must have been collecting the data, but didn't do anything with it until the team site was ready.
I'm surprised it was that late. I wonder what, I don't have any recollection of what we did between then and the beginning and then.
Well, memory is super funny. So actually, in preparation for this, I went into the team site database and I looked at, you know, who were the first 10 users that registered with the site. And it was like me and a couple of friends that I had testing it. So I'm pretty confident that those joined on dates are correct. It would have been around the time. And then I looked a little bit later to see like, oh, who are like people who joined that I wasn't close friends with that were UpDoggers. And so that's has to have been when the site launched. And it was like mid 2015. I also, funny enough, forgot that like up until I think 2019, it was mostly myself and a little bit Jason uploading scores. Like I guess I'd completely wiped that out of my mind. Like if you'd have asked me before I looked, I would have said, "Oh yeah, Kat always did that."
He was still working at Coke.
No, I would.
Yeah, so I'm guessing it was 2019 when you left Coke.
No, I left Coke in 2018, so I did it way before that.
And she was doing it when she was at Coke.
Yeah.
Maybe she had to log in as you guys or something.
That's weird.
Yeah, because I mean,
Maybe you know what? Maybe it was 2018. I'm misremembering because I don't have the data right in front of me. But for a good chunk, like it was me, and I don't remember doing that really at all.
Yeah, I must have been like had some sort of login that read like you or something because
Because didn't you used to do stuff at Coke like while you were in the office?
All the school teacher and Coke bound no button. they both know the truth. The school we have projectors from the school system, and we have a bunch of Coke time developing UpDog. Thanks, corporations.
And we're gonna have all those people from 2014 that never got their points that are gonna come knocking on our door.
No, they got entered. I think we must have been putting them in the spreadsheet and just sitting on them until the team site was ready. Is the only thing I can think of.
I can't remember what we did with them, but I am positive that I was uploading scores prior to 2018. Jason was putting the events up, like,
yeah,
and he had the ability to upload scores, but
Okay.
I must have been shown as like signing in as one of you because I was definitely doing that. But maybe you changed it. Like maybe there was a different team site before or something, and I don't know. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Well, it's this riveting conversation. Follow us for more details on what happened to the data early on.
All right. So, Bryan, how did you get involved with UpDog as a founder? What was it that you felt that you could bring to the team? Obviously, we're talking about development and stuff, but how did the founder conversation happen?
I don't honestly remember. I think it just sort of slowly happened. As I was working on the team site, and then you guys involved me in more and more of the other discussions. Like we would have our weekly meetings, and originally I was just there to talk about like the team site, but then I think you guys like basically started asking me for more and more opinions on other things, and then at some point some threshold was crossed and I was officially one of the founders. That's my recollection. I don't know.
I was just gonna say, I think it was because we couldn't pay you, Bryan.
Couldn't pay you yet. And no, I'm serious. It's because we wanted to give you value, and we felt like the most valuable thing we had was ownership in UpDog. We didn't have money then. We were just creating this thing on our own because we built the website ourselves in WordPress.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're like, we can make you a founder, or we can give you $1.95.
Both worth about the same right now, but the second one has more long-term potential.
What is it about UpDog that you are most proud of?
I mean, at first there was no other disc organization doing what we were doing with the ups and the achievements and like having user profiles with all that information. Usually it was just like end of year type worlds scores were put up, things like that. But then like seeing the fruit of our labor, like maybe 2 or 3 years in, and seeing like this group of people who probably wouldn't have been into disc otherwise, like would have been turned off by some of the things that disgruntled us from some of the other organizations, which also like me being sort of that target demographic, like I experienced that. I remember going to, I won't name the organizations, but I remember going to several other organization events with you guys and a few on my own, and being like, this is not very friendly, and people are kind of can be mean and snarky. And us having that ethos of always being friendly and being, in the corner of the player and the dog, and being an advocate for both of them. Seeing that how truly much of a difference that made was probably one of the biggest things I'm proud of.
That's a great answer.
I mean, Bryan, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'm kind of sharing this as mine, but I also feel like I remember a few conversations with you at UpDiff about this, especially early on, but like seeing UpDiff doesn't that make it like just so obvious to you? Like, I know we've had some conversations like, can you believe that like we've got all these people here playing, even that like our first UpDiff?
For sure, yeah. Even our first UpDiff was an amazing eye opener, and then every single UpDiff after that has been an eye opener. And I'm like, I can't believe we're at the point now where the number of venues that could support UpDiff is pretty limited. Like that, we could never, like after the first one, I don't think we could ever go back to Purina Farms. They just couldn't handle an event of that size. And seeing how it's grown, how people like that's like their big like thing that they're going for throughout the year. Like, yeah, it's kind of humbling, honestly, and scary to like put that on. Like, there's a lot of stress that something's going to go sideways. I remember like a lot of stress about the last one because of the weather, and we made backup plans for things, but still it could go sideways, and knowing like this is the big event that these people care about and have spent a lot of money and traveled long distances, and like if it goes bad, you feel like personally responsible. So that's that it's humbling, but it's also like very stress inducing. I have to admit, like the UpDiffs that we didn't have, was it only one or was it two? I can't even remember now because of COVID. Like those were more enjoyable years for me because we didn't have it. Because like maybe I do wonder if people understand how much work
They don't know
to put those on it, and how much money like we're spending on that. Like those 2 years we didn't put it on, like I felt like we got paid adequately for what we do for UpDog. But that's all money that goes towards UpDiff. Yeah, it's a lot. I hope when we talk about the future, I think the future is like, how are we going to manage that? And are we going to split it into multiple events and, all of that kind of stuff that we have to figure out? Because I don't think we can continue to have just one big UpDiff for much longer.
unless we rotate games and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to, Bryan alluded to something this past year, so I thought maybe we could share it, a little nugget that probably nobody else knows about except for us. But like last year we were at Kentucky, right? At Cadiz. And we were very worried about the rain and very worried about the parking. And obviously we should have been worried about the rain because man, did it rain. But we were worried about like what's going to happen if like literally the entire place floods and the cars can't get parked. So there's anybody who went to UpDiff last year, that if you're going from the lodge down to the field, you pass a golf course and you pass a skeet shooting range. And so like our plan was, all right, if necessary, we park all the cars at the golf course and the skeet shooting place, and we literally had rented vans that we were going to shuttle people back and forth between the golf. I mean, this was worst case scenario, but like Bryan said, like we don't want anybody spending their time and money coming to this and have to go, sorry, today is canceled. Like, because we know how hardy you guys are. You guys are hardy, and you're like, hey, I'm going to be out there. I don't care what the weather is. I came to play. I want to do this. But we just knew, man, the parking could be an issue. If we can't put cars there, what are we going to do? But that was our backup plan for the parking and the cars was we were going to have a few people just spend the day shuttling people back and forth. It would have been amazing. Not really.
I'm so glad we didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
And the rain was bad. Like
It
we had worst
was.
case scenario weather and we didn't have to use that, thankfully. So that's good.
All concrete parking this year.
Yes.
And bathrooms, real bathrooms.
Yes.
No muddy porta potties. It's so exciting.
Well, we'll still have porta potties, but you don't have to use them if you want to walk a
There
little
will be real
ways.
bathrooms. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so even though you don't play UpDog as much as you used to, Brian, what is it that still drives you to be part of our team and be part of UpDiff? Like what's the motivation for you?
Uh, so I do hope to get back into it. I've been just extremely busy with work. I think I skipped over that part of the first question. So, I was a software engineer when we started. Now I've kind of moved up into that company. I'm like VP of product, and like it just is much more consuming of my time. We also moved, from living in a regular little neighborhood to 20 acres here in Dade City, and like that takes up more of my time. So it's just been like really hard to try to carve out time to continue to do that. But I do want to get back to that. So there's sort of like that ongoing hope that I'll get back into playing it. There's also a bit of like, in all honesty, like just like trying to maintain that streak. I'm super bummed that I had to miss that one up diff because of
Yeah.
a dog that was pregnant that was having like a discharge coming out. It was like close. She was close to giving birth, and like that can be super dangerous. So I was literally having to take that dog to the vet every single day for various testing, and like there's no way I could have made it. So I'm super bummed that like I have that spot missing in my streak, but and like I do still get enjoyment out of like seeing other people get their enjoyment from it. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
You get motivated by everybody else's love for it, and then you're working on getting back into the game.
Yeah, yeah.
Brian, did you think that we'd still be around in 10 years when you first started this?
I wasn't sure. I it was probably like 50-50 in my mind. I think that changed once we had our first up diff. Um, but then I didn't figure that it would keep growing the way it has. So that has still surprised me. Like I think we had just shy of 100,000 runs last year. And it'll be interesting to see if we make that milestone or not this year. It's yeah. So yeah, at first I didn't know. I would say after our first up diff, I thought that we probably would, but it didn't. Not to this extent. No. But like honestly, like at this point, thinking about this podcast, like where are we going to be in another 10 years? And I remember so listening to the other podcast with Jason, like he mentioned we kind of achieved all our goals. Like we need to set new goals so that we have something to strive for, or at least verbalize them. So
Yeah, and you said something interesting there, Brian. Like the part that stood out for me is like life gets in the way, right? And I think that anytime that we're doing something for like a long enough amount of time, that's just gonna happen. I know that there was a few years for me away from competition just because of the age of my dogs, and one of them retired early, and I didn't have other dogs ready, and that changed my investment in the sport to being like judging a lot more and teaching a lot more and not playing as much. So I think that's kind of a normal progression of dog sports is sometimes you'll be playing actively more, and then sometimes you'll be playing some other role that still helps to develop the game. But it's cool that you still have that desire to get back into playing. And I think that really takes something, to like when you get away from it, to get the work back put in so that you can have fun playing again. When you're busy, I think is an intentional choice about joy. And I know this is not the direction of this podcast, but that's been a big experience for me for the
Right,
past 3
down
years.
with joy.
No, I mean, like sometimes you get away from the playing part of the sport if you've been in it for long enough, and it takes something to step back in the playing part of that and to have
Yeah.
that be fun instead of like, well, I have to, or I'm missing my community, or I don't have, like it takes something to be constantly active in a dog sport. And I think there's a normal ebb and flow of some years you're just not going to be playing, but if you really love that, organization or community or sport itself, it'll draw you back in because of the joy factor of it. So I'm happy to hear that life gets busy for you and you have a lot more stuff to manage, but it's still there for you to like want to come out and get back into playing because I think that takes something.
It's somewhat. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jack.
No, you go, Brian. I'll jump in later.
So it's somewhat strategic. So Jamie and I have this dream of opening a large indoor dog sport event center in this area. And we've been trying to make it happen for a couple of years now and keep running into roadblocks, but it's really something that's like both of our dreams. We're working hard to make it happen. So like just both focusing on trying to like make as much money as we can. I have a feeling the company that I'm working for might get bought at some point in the next 3 or 4 years, which would be beneficial to me. So I'm hoping like somewhere around that time, like I'll be able to take a step back a bit and help run that dog center and like get back into dog sports, in particular disc dog. So like that's the dream, that's the plan. I hope that's what happens. That's what we're working really hard on to make happen. But like it kind of requires a little bit of sacrifice right now to
Yep.
focus on work and have a few other distractions.
Exciting
Well,
to
Brian-
hear the indoor facility coming. If they're hosted at a seminar, they can rent your indoor space.
Well, I was just going to say, I just want to put this out there that I have a dream of running a small sandwich shop at a large indoor dog sports arena. So just letting you know that
I
that's
have
a
a dream
dream
of
of
running
mine.
a coffee shop inside a nice
Whoa.
indoor dog sport. And I make great cappuccinos, so he can run the deli and I'll run the cappuccino shop in exchange for using
Well,
the
it's
indoor.
the same shop, Dre. You just get there early in the morning and leave at like 11. I'll come in at 11, leave at 3.
We're great partners. I love our plan. And we just shift workload. This is a good plan. This is a good plan.
But when we design the building, we'll make sure there's a adequate spot for a little sandwich shop, coffee shop.
Cafe with a coffee with one of
Excellent.
those nice espresso machines. Thank you.
The bigger, more important question is, will it be able to fit an UpDog field indoors?
Yeah, that's kind of like one of my like must-haves. Like if we're gonna spend all this money and put all this into it, I would like to be able to play the sport. I like to play. So yes, the plan is for sure for it to be able to accommodate a full UpDog field indoors.
But
With
probably
some
not
outdoor fields.
probably not an up diff.
No.
No, I don't
Nobody
think
has that
so.
many fields indoors. Nobody does so far. Not with a 100-yard field either. Cat.
Yeah. Not with all the fields indoors, that's for sure.
That's a lot. That's a lot of indoor space, a lot of air conditioning.
I mean, not even Purina Farms can do that. So
Nope, they have 2 fields. One is long enough and one's not. So, well, the second one would be long enough for just a smaller field, but not a full field. Kat, do you want to ask question number 6?
Jack, you have to hand it to me.
I'm putting her to work.
All right. Thinking back over the years, should UpDog have done something differently?
yes, we never should have aspired to try to mail things out to people. I think that was
I think we all agree that was epically a bad idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say that's somewhere that other organizations excel over us. Like,
Yeah, we suck at
agility
mailing.
organizations send out titles in the mail and plaques in the mail. We are just not.
We just don't mail it.
Not
We
it.
might package it and put it in envelopes and everything, but we're not mailing it.
There's a
Make
box
Angela mad.
somewhere
Angela mad.
there's a box somewhere in a Pasco County post office with 10 pounds of plastic somewhere. I'll have to know where they went.
Well, website wise, we had started with like a WordPress site and then you built that database on the side. And I know one of the questions that we had talked about, oh, I don't know, this is probably 6, 7, 8 years ago. We had talked about investing up front. Remember, we had talked about it was like 50 or $60,000 for this other database to kind of be built. It was when we were first starting to talk to you and you would have been managing that team. Like, do you think that we should have done anything different website wise with how we approached building the database or launching it for our people, or do you like kind of how we've rolled it out with more complexity as we've gone on? Since that's
Well, in hindsight, I would have done things differently, but I don't think at the time we knew enough to make a different decision. And I don't know how it would have turned out better necessarily. One thing that does, I don't want to say haunt me, but that I wish we had a better solution for, like the temporary teams and temporary competitors, and that was a mechanism by which to make sure all results got loaded into the team site. But if someone didn't have a pre-existing account, it would still go in there. The idea was that they could claim it later, which works. I mean, they do that. Figuring out a better way to make sure that the team numbers are correct in the spreadsheet and that the clubs enter, because if they don't match, then that like results in temporary teams getting created. So I do like at some point I would like to try to clean all of that up. That might actually, so in my day job I've been doing a ton with AI, and that might be a use case for AI to help figure out, yeah, this temporary team with this name and this dog is the same as this like legit team, and merge them together. The other thing that's gotten kind of tricky is people inadvertently sharing dogs because they have the same name. Even though I feel like the instructions are very clear, but that still happens. I think it was Jason maybe originally had the idea of, oh well, why don't we just have it be dogs take the surname of their handler? And I was kind of against that, but I think if we had done that, probably wouldn't have had the issue where people were inadvertently sharing dogs that happen to share the same name. So a rare time I will acknowledge Jason had a good idea.
I felt that one coming. I was like,
But yeah, no, I think that probably would have been a way to go in retrospect.
Cool.
Well,
All right,
one of the things that you just reminded me about again, Bryan, and this was what I was going to chime in on earlier, was just the fact that the 6 of us have, been able to stick this out together too. I mean, not that there's any like, I mean, we have disagreements, we have, lively discussions sometimes where we don't all agree or whatever, but the fact that we've all stayed committed to this and stuck with it together as a team, I think is pretty amazing. And of course, on your part, we appreciate that from your end, because we said it before, with each one of us brings a different component to this, and without any one of us, like UpDog wouldn't be what it is right now. And I'm sure that that's going to continue into the future. So like the last question we've got for you, Bryan, which you kind of alluded to a little bit, gave us some thoughts already on, but like the future, like of UpDog, like thinking ahead 10 years, like especially maybe from your side of things, from the tech side of things, like what would be, a dream you'd want to have? Like what would be like your wish list? Like I'd like to see us go, here.
So on the tech side, I really do want to rewrite the team site. The technology stack that it's built on is 10 or 11 years old at this point. It was very, very mainstream at the time, but now it's, especially with the advent of like this concept of AI pair programming, where you can like have a AI in your editor helping you with stuff. The technology stack that our site is built on is not something that is easily used by AI programmers. It can be difficult to find other like people that have offered to volunteer to help out. Like their experiences in a different technology stack. So something a little more modern, something that's definitely like easier to host on Azure, because that's something that's changed since we started. Originally, it was for a number of years, it was hosted on servers that I provided, that I had co-located in a data center in Tampa. And a couple of years ago, we moved over to hosting in Azure, and changing out the technology stack could make that less expensive and more easier to iterate and get other people involved in helping out. So that's definitely a dream. I don't know if you've talked about the scoring app at all on the podcast, but we've for people who hadn't heard of this, we engaged with a developer to work on an Android-based scoring app, and there's some work we need to do to finish getting that integrated. And it'll be interesting to see if that flourishes or if that ends up being like, oh, this just didn't work out. It really needs to be paper and pencil, and see where we can go. I'm hoping it works out, but that's still sort of a experiment, I think. As far as like non-technical stuff though, like I really want to see us expand into other countries. And I guess this is sort of a crossover with technical stuff. Make it easier to set up and host events, and make it easier to like sign up for events. Because right now, all of that is handled outside of the team site. And it's kind of up to the club to do whatever registration process they have. We have suggestions for them that involve like Cognito forms or Jot forms or whatever. But to see that built into the site, so you can actually just come to the UpDog site to see UpDog events and sign up for them, and get some sort of sense of like potentially a rating system on the event host, so if this is does this host put on well-regarded events or not? And that's something I don't know if we really want to get into, but like something that when we started UpDog that I didn't even consider was handling all the crappy human stuff that happens. Like people can be kind of not great. People annoy each other. People want to put in complaints about people. People legitimately do things that I would say border on like being abusive towards their dog, and having to that's not what any of us signed up for. But we've had to figure out how to handle that. And I think that may have, if we continue to grow, we'll have to evolve that as well. Like in my core, I've experienced secondhand, how some other organizations handle that. I've experienced the sort of tribunal system that Napa has in Flyball. And I hope we can avoid that sort of thing. But that's something we'll probably have to deal with in the next 10 years. And I think Jason touched on this too. I really do think we could expand our achievement system. He kind of touched on the idea of being a little more proactive about, I think it was more using it as a way to urge or prompt people to get out and play. Like, hey, you're so close to this next achievement. And if we have the events in the system, they'd be like, hey, you should go play at this event. You could probably earn this achievement type thing. But I would love to see us expand achievements. Right now, they're very much in the context of a team. I think there could be achievements at the handler level that goes across their teams. I could see there be. Sorry, what was that?
You do club stuff. You could do regional stuff. You could do Northeast, Southeast, and we're going to have these regional events like the Northeast qualify, whatever. We're going to have qualifier events. That's kind of all playing into that same conversation.
I know, Brian, you've always mentioned breed specific things too, as to maybe some stats or achievements and things like that.
Yeah, I would love to be able to get some breed information in there and be able to produce stats about that. I know there are a vocal set of updoggers who are also interested in that. So yeah, that's definitely, I would love to be able to do that as well. I think it'll be tricky, especially since mixes are so common in disc dog. To hand like that's one of those things that I don't think I don't know anyways. And I've not seen any other dog sport organization try to handle mixes. It's usually just, is it a purebred dog or is it like an American mutt? Or I think in one agility event we registered Banshee or my border whippet as a mongrel, and then that's what they put up. But to try to handle that in a thoughtful way that can be useful, but that's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky to figure out. So.
Yeah, and I think that's why we haven't really like pushed to go down that road is, disc has always been about any dog can play. Yeah, it'd be great for the people with purebred dogs to be able to celebrate, their achievements within their breed, but we don't want to take away from the non-purebred dog, the
Yeah.
mutt out of the shelter or the purpose-bred sport mix, they're all dogs are awesome. So, I can see us doing it someday, but I can just say that's why it hasn't been a priority. It's just disc is about every dog.
Well, and I was just going to say, as you can see too, just in this podcast, we've mentioned probably at least 6 to 8 projects that are huge projects that we could go down that road, and we are constantly trying to prioritize things to make sure that registration for UpDiff goes smoothly. UpDiff itself goes smoothly, and so a lot of these things just as you're hearing them and you're like, oh, that would be great. I hope that's the one that happens next year or whatever. And other things sometimes pop up, and Brian mentioned a couple of those too that just pop up with what's happening out in the disc dog world. So like we always have to sit there and prioritize and say, all right, which ones do we need to focus on first?
Yeah.
All right, Brian, anything else to say about the origins of UpDog before we do a little time warp with you?
We're gonna get time warpy.
I did want to touch on two things just with what I think might be like sort of my unique perspective as like the newbie at disc dog when we started. One has been like the evolution of rollers and like that just seems so natural to me with my worldview at the time basically being like defined by like what Ron and April would teach at PVibe, and rollers were very much a part of like getting the new dog into going after and pursuing the disc. And it seemed like such a like it makes sense to include that, and that it evolved into like, oh, it's not just for new dogs or new handlers, and just the argument, the forever argument that there will be from certain people that hate rollers or that want to see them like classified differently or think they're easy. I mean, I'm not an expert by any means. I feel like I'm pretty decent. I've most like a lot of my scores are in like the 80th or 90th percentile. So like I'm not amazing, but I'm okay. And like I find rollers very very challenging. So just the arguments, and people are very adamant, and there's a lot of passion there, and that's something that I wouldn't have expected when we started. And I'm not really sure when that argument started. I don't really remember it being a thing the first couple of years. Maybe I'm wrong in that.
We could really
Also,
play that. We could play that up, like the roller crew and the in-air crew. That's another thing we can do with merch. Like we can have
Yeah.
people like wearing their team flags for like team roller and team air throws only, and let them battle it out at UpDiff. Like we can make merchandise for that. People would want to represent rollers, and they would want to like heckle each other for like. So that's kind of a fun thing we
Well, we
can
did have a Roller Queen shirt one year
yeah. Yeah, so
that
When
we
we did
can
I believe
that,
Gary wore proudly.
and we did that for Far Out, especially at UpDiff. We had like the best air delivery, best ground delivery, that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, I think maybe potentially playing that up in other games and in general would be interesting. Also, it's just my perspective, and I could be wrong. You guys correct me, but it feels like Disc Dog in general prior to UpDog wasn't very like training oriented. Um, and again, like me being brand new to the sport and lucking into like my introduction being Ron and April, they're like, and it wasn't until later Jamie told me like how unique they are, is that they're dog trainers. They're not just like people training you how to throw and working with your dog, but they're like legit dog trainers. Um, and Jamie reminded me of like, I think it was maybe that first event we went to when that flyball competition was canceled. And I'm not sure if it was a CFDDC event or what. It was definitely like a local one. Um, there was this player who was like, he had these amazing throws, but he would fight with his dog every time. Like every time the dog came back, he would fight and fight and fight to get the dog to drop the disc. And I remember like just being a complete dummy at the time, like saying, why doesn't he just train his dog to drop the disc? And like, I maybe said that a little too loud, but that, I feel like post UpDog, and I'm not sure if it's because of UpDog, it seems like actual like dog training is more a part of being a well-rounded disc competitor. I'm curious if you guys agree with that, or if maybe that was just my perspective was off.
Yeah,
I-
I think what did that was the crossover sports. It was bringing in agility, fly ball, and dock diving people into our crossover sports because there's dog training required. And in disc, it was hippies going out with a frisbee and just flinging your disc to your dog. And that was literally how the whole sport was created. And there's a lot of
Those
people that
darn
still,
hippies.
yeah, I mean, I'm a hippie, but I appreciate the dog training part of it. But I think that the way that the sport started wasn't that. It was just going out with your dog and plastic and flinging it, and there was no dog training. There was no dog training.
I mean, I think that I don't want to. I certainly don't believe that the sole reason that the sport has moved that direction is because of UpDog. I know there's many factors, but I
Yeah.
do totally agree with Bryan. I mean, everybody on this podcast right now, as I'm looking at our square of four, all of us did learn, through Ron and April that just like Bryan said, they were dog trainers as well as, disc dog players and disc dog trainers. And it's where I learned my foundation for understanding how to train dogs, not just for disc, but for other things as well. And it's something that I think all of us took into the games that we developed. We've always talked about how when we were developing a game, we were thinking about, okay, what new dog skills, what new handler skills does this game bring to the other mix of games, and how can that make this team a better team, a better disc dogging team? And so, and I know Dre and I have talked. Well, the whole team has talked about this, but I think Dre and I kind of want to build more of that, and that's part of the podcast too. Is like, hey, if we can get people listening to the podcast, of course we'll have different topics, but definitely helping people understand how to work with their dogs is part of that, and getting more education out there.
Yeah, I think it was a function of right place, right time, like we talked about on the podcast with Jason. I think that's something that Ron and April were at the forefront of, and then other disc doggers and started doing trainings with actual dog training in mind. Around the same time that UpDog got started. So I think the combination of that plus us creating games to help teach our dog skills, like that just kind of made it explode into where we are now.
It's interesting. It's interesting that the surplus of other dog sports coming in didn't really resonate for you guys as like a big shift and change. I just think there's so much more dog training involved in like you show up at a flyball club, you don't just run your dog down the lane in the box. Like there's months and months of training before you even do that. People get handed a frisbee and they go out and they just play freestyle, never having done it before ever. So like I don't know. I think that the crossover sports brought that assumed culture into disc that was not previously present. Yes, obviously, Ron and April's instruction of dog training, but even when I started that, it was very theoretical. I didn't get it. Like I didn't want the theoretical part. I wanted the step 1, 2, 3. How do you throw your disc to this dog? How do you vault? Like that's what I came into disc dog for. It wasn't dog training. That was there, but it wasn't what I wanted or what I signed up for. And it wasn't really until we started seeing other people coming in from other sports that we were like, there's this big influx in freestyle. Hey, I'm talking about freestyle, Jack. There's this big influx in freestyle all of a sudden of more tricks, like pet training tricks that we hadn't seen before until we started doing UpDog freestyle. Like, I just don't think we saw a lot of that stuff. It was more throwing the disc, the dog pursuing the throw of the disc versus the dog having a trained understanding of the behavior.
For
I
sure.
think.
Yeah. I just think it was a combo. It was
Yeah.
it wasn't just the crossover people coming in. It wasn't just this or that. It was just all right place, right time. It was the time in our sport for that to happen,
Yeah.
My very first disc dog seminar that Kat signed me up for, Ron and April, bed and breakfast in Minnesota, right?
Michigan.
And
I was up.
and 2 days into it, I'm like, I came here to learn how to throw an air bounce. We haven't done any throwing. All I've been doing is learning how to mark my dog for doing things right. I'm like, what the heck's going on?
Yep. Until 11 o'clock at night, waking up at 6, starting all over again. It's like basic training. It was like military basic training. Those 2 5
3
camps.
in the morning.
Yep. In a smoky garage, learning about theoretical dog training.
No,
It was
but
definitely not what we
it
expected.
laid
But
the foundation for so much more that I was able to do with my dog. Had I just gone and just learned how to do an air bounce, that would not have served me well.
nope. So those 2
Dog
days of
training and
were
conspiracy.
all right, you ready to get time warpy?
Yes.
Let's
All right.
do it.
So I have the timer ready. Jack, are you ready?
I'm ready. I got the first question.
Pat, do you want to rotate in these questions, or you just want it to be me and Jack?
It'll have to be you and Jack because I don't have the paper.
All right, me and Jack. All right, you ready? Are you ready, Brian?
I'm ready.
Ready, set, go.
Brian, if you had to sing karaoke right now, what song would you pick?
Fireworks by Katy Perry.
Nice. What's the worst job you've ever had?
Cashier at Kmart.
Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
100%. It's the Christmas movie.
What's the best topping for ice cream? 39 seconds.
Hot fudge.
What is your favorite UpDog game?
Throw and go.
Who was your first celebrity crush? 25 seconds.
It was the mechanic / tech for Knight Rider. I think her name was Bonnie.
It's a good memory.
What is your favorite dog disc to throw?
12 seconds.
A supersonic of some sort. The ones that Fiona wouldn't destroy in one round.
That's the
like
canine candy.
Supersonic Taffies, probably.
Yeah, and I would say it's candy. That was time. It took way too long on those. We started off so strong. Like those first 6 we flew through, and then we got conversational. So your time is done.
All
But
right.
I want to know what the rest of the answers are. So
that
hammer turkey for the holidays.
turkey. Honestly,
Turkey.
well, both. Both.
That's a good answer.
Favorite musical genre, Brian?
Don't say death metal.
German electronic punk.
I never expected that. All right, video games or board games?
Board games as video games. I like my go-to when I need like a 15-minute clear my head is to play Risk on my iPhone.
On your computer.
Cool.
Those were wonderfully informative answers to our time warp questions. Thank you. That was potentially my favorite time warp so far. Oh, awesome job. Thank you, Bryan, for being here for our Origins podcast. We are very, not only as a team, are we very grateful for your electronic expertise because you blow all of us away in that department. But, we're grateful for your time today and for your ongoing investment in UpDog, that you're still here with us and in for whatever our next adventure is. We literally couldn't do it without you. So thank you for being here on the podcast and being part of our team.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I do want to throw out there maybe to consider doing an origin story with Cody. That's sort of like this, like we couldn't do a lot, especially UpDiff without him. It might be interesting to get his perspective on it as sort of a shadow longtime member.
Yeah, we can get some.
I was thinking about that with Steven, our artist.
I personally would love, because I don't interact with him hardly at all, but he's done all this amazing stuff. I would love to hear his origin story and how
the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, having a designer stick with us for 10 years so we have that consistent look and feel in artwork and stuff is huge.
And I think he's captured. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I just think the artwork just goes so well with the spirit of UpDog. Like, the vibe of UpDog. The artwork just goes with it so well.
For sure.
Well, to wrap this up, Bryan, I just want to reiterate what Dre said, and thank you for everything that you've done for UpDog, and I appreciate you being a part of the team. And a lot of times, like, you really don't think through it, but first of all, Bryan is not just limited to tech side of things. I mean, he has great ideas that he brings to the table for so much more. But on the tech side of things, it is so valuable having someone that understands the game and understands what we're trying to do with, like, a new game or the scoring of a new game. Like, there's no way you could reach out to a programmer and just be like, all right, well, let me explain greedy to you. They'd be like, what the heck are you talking about? And, like, why do we get points here and all of a sudden now we don't get points at the end of the game? Like, it's just so amazing that all the people that we work with too, like, have this connection to dog sports and understand what we're trying to do for our players, what we're trying to do for the dogs, and so forth. So anyway, Bryan, it's a thank you, and it's an appreciation of all of the talents that you bring to the team.
Agreed.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And honestly, you guys have been a great set of people to work with. I appreciate each and every one of you. And like you said before, like, UpDog wouldn't exist if any single one of us wasn't part of it, I think. At least not in its current form.
Yeah. All right, guys. We're sorry we're getting sappy here at the end of this, but thanks, Dre, for co-hosting with me. Kat, always appreciate you being a podhead and joining on. She just can't hear me and Dre doing a podcast now without, like, sneaking on to Zoom and, like, being a part of it. But it's great having you. And for the rest of you guys, the listeners out there, we hope we see you on an UpDog field soon.
And in the meantime, be kind to each other.
And be kind to your dogs. We'll see you next time.
See you, everyone. I'm gonna get that bird.